the first title of the lecture was stolen from Hadze Artman, How Much Schatzi, because I had just had that in my ear. And it starts by recommending a questioning of the questions that one asks to favor quantitative questions, because so often discourse and also literary texts or essays tend to ask sort of absolutist and artificial questions like refugees, nice people or criminals? And then obviously there's no answer, so then there ensues a discussion and a lot of time is wasted, and it's a completely unnecessary kind of discourse. So perhaps, I suppose this is just one of the normal functions of someone working with text, to continually be aware of the perhaps more aware than other people because of this profession, that you try and intervene when the initial setups are flawed and faulty, and don't participate in producing useless discourse. That was my first start, and then I'll enter in the text here. The rain peasels off from the sky ineffectually, and this celestial incontinence seems unimportant, as the lettuce dribbles from the kebabs which will be unremembered, a waste of such good cookery, while the sober Iranian on the bench nibbles a few digestibles, back to the delirious falafel waster. I deeply dread 2 days of listening to writers presenting their construction of righteousness, blowing up their bad or silly ideas, ignoring their own knowledge that it is silly or stupid, or else coming out like Clemens Schitko and bejahing or identifying with the criticism as if it were nothing but a senseless stigma. And also the kind of Selbstanzeige can be odious to listen to all day long, which is another form of wasted time. And yet, the best thing I could come up with was my informed concern, I suppose, like most of us, thinking that we need to really reformat our talents to make literature useful. One thing is the relic of presentation. So when we were talking about publishing houses and the economic organization of publishing houses, it raises the question, how important is publishing, and what is an author exactly? And this, I suppose if you look at your own psychology, how important or how much ego is connected with this form of microphone use and the use of the printed word to amplify one's deep desires, and connecting that with the question how much. I think it's a legitimate desire to see one's weird emotions come out into the open, and to be able to be compared with others and be discussed in an informed and subtle way. At the same time, as soon as you enter into this machinery of generating value or pseudo value, or intellectual capital or real or sort of monetary capital, you very easily get caught up in a dynamics that is hard to stop. So for me, I thought I should really start practicing calculating better, and from the beginning of a year perhaps say this far and no farther, and invent certain criteria when I say, okay, this is enough. When I get to this point, whether I measure it in money or numbers of published books or numbers of hours of microphone use or something, to say that there's a certain level that a red light starts blinking when this level gets problematic, and normally it appears as an aesthetic problem that you annoy people when you use the microphone too much. But often you don't notice it yourself in time, so you only notice it 2 years later after somebody has said it in a review finally or something. So I guess that would result in a kind of question to the room: what other forms of application of things that one has learned by pretending to be a writer for a while can one think of? But I think there's probably enough to do. A completely different topic that I wanted to talk about is the ideologization of form. Obviously, being open formally and being able to focus one's concentration, values, and discipline on new forms and new ways is an asset to all life forms, and its practice is valuable and must not be condemned or belittled. At the same time, people really quickly, and now already in the third or fourth generation, seem to think that if their methods are not respected as highly as other methods, then it would mean that these methods are somehow in themselves intrinsically radical or have some revolutionary quality. Now it becomes a little bit sort of pseudo-philosophical. The whole model of things having fixed qualities is maybe flawed, or at least widely overused. Of course, it's bullshit. All revolutionary quality is relative. It's about tools and being different and use and practice. And there's no guarantee that, for example, sound poetry in itself is different or radical. As soon as one is in an established scene, it is the norm. And like abstract art, sound poetry can in fact be very easily accepted without the people that adorn their offices and cities with it having to adjust their thinking even one bit. This doesn't mean they're bad forms or naturally corrupt. They are just normal and natural, like a little lake in the middle of a campus. They bring a little bit of anarchy into the day-to-day constraints of economic streamlining. But there's a difference between that and text that is able to tell someone something that they don't want to hear, which I think sound poetry has difficulties doing, except for maybe sort of deep psychological emotions, but that remains rather vague. So it's hard to change a law with sound poetry. But there may be, I mean, there's Arbeitsteilung, so you don't everybody have to do everything at the same time, right? Like the Enzensberger said, it's no help to make everyone more sheep-like. As a secondary practice or style to spread, it is okay. And it seems sometimes, indeed, that with all the crowdfunding, car-sharing, couch surfing going on, that Kropotkin's idea of mutual help being an essential feature of life and evolution is being more fully realized. But the question is by everybody or in what areas. This only seems to work among nice, harmless, and not desperate people that send out certain vibes of harmlessness that one learns in gentrified places. Like with this lifestyle, one only feels safe in places where one won't get hurt, even if one is stupid and silly, drunk or on drugs, uninformed, irrational, because one has been supported in the belief that one is perfect the way one is, and so everyone has to be, which is a kind of fake platform, and an invisible papamobile, this drunk eating the kebab seems to be in a papamobile, and then if someone actually has an aggressive reaction to this actually kind of structurally provocative behavior or situation, structurally, because it's he's not really being aggressive, but he's just being stupid, but he's used to being able to be stupid without being taken to task for it. It does show a situation that on the long term might explode or might actually constructively change, and I suppose that's what you were saying, agent of change, but how to be an agent of change. Yes, I think. Yeah, I suppose I'm interested in camouflage, and for example, I heard Artmann give a speech as a recording from of a later recording of a text written in 1955 against the rearming of Austria. I remember Stefan was also there was a program that had authors give speeches in public places, which 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I don't know. It was this big task to give a speech, and several authors did it, and you could tell that it's a completely new challenge to use this form. And so yeah, I think that this subterfuge is an interesting topic. I think earlier I mentioned that I didn't read that mapping from one place on another, analogy is a powerful tool that can be used in a versatile way, I guess. So I often, probably too often, discuss moral questions in the model of interpersonal relationships with this individual people, somehow getting at the nucleus, or actually maybe mapping moral questions onto a situation that people like reading about, that's somehow romantic and beautiful, but then you can sort of program your brain to recognize it in other situations and not be afraid or panic. It's like Hegel says, art is a form of practice or training for life. And yeah, no, it seems to me often that a lot of colleagues have talents that are a little bit stuck in conventional forms. Like I noticed in the reading on Wednesday, it seemed like the Schnittpunkte, the crossing point of the technical expertise and a sort of sense of humor creates the really electric art in Pieringer's things. And then when the topic is just sort of used as a topic, then that's the thing that is done consciously is like, okay, I'm going to do a piece about thinking. That's not the exciting thing, but the things sort of in between, or like I don't know. Markus Köhler's really fantastic feeling for how humor works, or how to make things really work when you say them the right way, powerfully. But then it sort of gets all dumped in the shoebox of poetry slam aesthetics. And it often seems like, I don't know, we need more challenges to get out of the habits that we're using. And I'm certainly in a totally catastrophic mode, but I don't want to, you can take me to task for that, perhaps. I'm not about to get into it because I can never stop if you start. And another, maybe the last concrete thing I wanted to mention was the terrible habit of art critics to use sort of a kind of simulation. So I think at a certain point, when postmodernism set in or something, art critics learned that you cannot use the old-fashioned conservative value system that was up to then used to evaluate art. And then they started using a trick that says, does this artwork fulfill the things that the tasks that it sets itself? So you have these little thumb screws that only screw one thumb, and that makes one, if one follows this logic as an artist, it makes one very feige, very careful. I think much too careful, and because then it seems more important to set small goals, take little steps, and do everything correctly, and so you get an A+ or something. And one more negative spiral, I guess, the idealism in our way of life, if you call it prekariat, maybe, it often goes together with Wichtigtuerei, with self-importance. That if we completely trash ourselves and our bodies and our lives to live this way because we are so idealistic and find it so important, then we are sort of almost forced to believe that it is actually really important what we're doing, and it goes around in circles, which is why I need these stop calculations. Like when you hit this and this mark, this is a deet. Okay, so I have a beautiful sentence to stop. The screw has been screwing too long, it has lost its profile, now we have to work with nails. In fact, there are even more ways of fastening things. Bast, nut, fuck, weld.